who those companies may be, what access they may be able to have, but also some suggestion too that what Donald Trump wants to see is a further crackdown on drug trafficking cartels, organizations operating in and around Venezuela. It's not very clear exactly what would be seen as measurable action in Donald Trump's eyes when it comes to those things. But I think when he talks about running the country, what he really is meaning at the moment is essentially influencing the government, being able to influence a government that he's completely ideologically opposed to, but is able to somewhat, I think through these threats that he has made, assume some kind of compliance from them now.
Ione, what role does Machado play in all of this? She believes she legitimately won the election. She's in exile at the moment, but she doesn't seem to be playing a role in any of this at the moment.
Yeah, partly because Donald Trump made it quite clear in his press conference that, in his words, he doesn't think she has the support to govern, or that the opposition doesn't have the support to govern in Venezuela. Now, the opposition, I think, would dispute that, particularly because after the last election in 2024, they gathered all these voting tallies from electronic voting machines, and with 83% of them gathered, they said it proved that Nicolas Maduro had won that election. At the moment, she's not in Venezuela, as far as we understand from the interview that she gave with Fox News. She said she hopes to return, but we don't know her whereabouts exactly. She has made it clear that she is still determined to work with Donald Trump, that she would open up the oil industry. She's making these appeals that we've heard from her for months now to the US to work with her, work with the opposition. And she has said that she feels their candidate at that last election, Edmundo Gonzalez, should now assume the presidency. At the moment, though, this is all just rhetoric from the opposition. There isn't really any sense of a tangible plan or pathway for them to assume office.
That's Ione Wells, our South America correspondent, speaking to me a short while ago. Well, President Trump has also once again spoken about annexing Greenland, telling reporters that America needs the territory from the standpoint of national security. Well, the Health Secretary here in the UK, Wes Streeting, has warned that American intervention there would undermine collective security. Here he is speaking on BBC Breakfast.
What the Prime Minister has been absolutely unequivocal about this. It is not in the interests of NATO, the UK's national security or our collective security to question Greenland's future. We've heard very clearly from Denmark's leaders the implications for the NATO alliance. So again, the Prime Minister is seeking to use his influence, his relationship and his leverage to make sure that our country and the NATO alliance are stronger, not weaker.
Wes Streeting there. Well, Mark Leonard is the director of the European Council on Foreign Relations, and he told me that concerns about Greenland could explain why European leaders have been cautious when it comes to their public responses to the situation in Venezuela.
So there's a huge difference between the public reactions, which, as you say, have been very, very muted by everyone apart from the Spanish Prime Minister, and what is going on in private, where people are in a great deal of distress about what's happened, both because it is a massive contravention of international law, but also because if you put it together with what Donald Trump has been saying about Greenland, they're worried that Greenland might be next. And because it sets a precedent of might being right and of big powers having spheres of influence in their territories, which is something that Europeans have been dealing with in Ukraine for the last period of time. The fact that Vladimir Putin thinks that he should be allowed to invade his neighbor. And that is a massive threat to European security. And it's that which makes the position of European governments so awkward, because on the one hand, we're at a very perilous stage in the negotiations about the Ukrainian peace deal, and they want to use what leverage they have to make sure that there is a sustainable deal which doesn't leave Ukraine vulnerable to future invasions and incursions from Russia. But at the same time, they are pretty horrified about what's happened and the precedent which it sets.
I mean, Mark, you talked there about the feelings behind closed doors, and then, of course, the contrast between public statements. I'm just going to read something that's just come into us from the UN Human Rights Office. It says the international community must make clear that US intervention in Venezuela is a contravention of international law. Do you think the EU will get to a point where it makes such a statement?
I don't think it does, because we're at this very, very perilous position in the negotiations about Ukraine. The coalition of the willing is meeting today with the Americans. They're trying to get the Trump administration to underwrite any security guarantees to Ukraine. So in private, I think all European governments would agree with that statement, but